Welcome to Forbidden Desires channel that we hope you will have fun with us. Enjoy watching. I never thought I'd find myself here sitting alone in my car outside the supermarket, gripping the steering wheel as though it were the only thing keeping me upright. It was a warm evening, the kind where the sunset stretches across the horizon in brilliant strokes of pink and gold. But I barely noticed my mind was elsewhere on Brian, on the unfamiliar scent that lingered on his shirts, on the hushed phone calls, and the way his gaze slid away from mine. When I asked him about his day, he was cheating. I had suspected it for a while now, but tonight, standing in the kitchen while he showered, I had picked up his jacket from the back of the chair and inhaled deeply. Floral. Sweet, not mine, not ours. The realization had settled in my stomach like a stone. It wasn't just the perfume. There had been late nights, unaccounted for hours, and worst of all, the calls. At first I ignored them, the unknown numbers, the silence on the other end. And then last week the man's voice: locum. Your husband is seeing someone else. I had gripped the phone tighter, my breath catching in my throat. Who is this? A pause. Someone who thought you should know? Then the line went dead. I hadn't told Brian. What was the point? If I asked, he'd deny it. If I accused him outright, he'd turn it on me. Make me feel paranoid. That was Brian's way, always controlled, always logical. But logic didn't change the way my heart ached. I took a slow breath and glanced at my reflection in the rearview mirror. My face looked tired, my brown eyes dim with the weight of too much knowing at 50. I wasn't old, but I felt old tonight. I had spent half my life with Brian, and now suddenly I realized how much of it had been built on a foundation I hadn't questioned. The thought of going home made my skin prickle. Marion would be there. Ma and my son, 21 years old, tall, broad-shouldered, like his father, but softer in the ways that mattered. He still kissed me on the cheek when he left the house, still leaned in close when he spoke, as if his words were meant for me alone. I loved him fiercely, more than I had ever loved anyone, and tonight I needed him more than I wanted to admit. With a sigh, I started the car and drove home. Amelia was in the kitchen when I arrived, barefoot, wearing one of his old high school t-shirts that had faded to a soft blue. He was slicing an apple, his hands moving with easy precision. You're late, he said, glancing up. I set my purse on the counter, got distracted. He studied me for a moment, then set the knife down. You okay? That was the thing about Amelia. He always saw me. I wanted to tell him, not the details, not the weight of it all, but something just enough, so I wouldn't feel so alone, but the words lodged in my throat. I forced a smile, just tired. He didn't look convinced, but he didn't push. Instead, he picked up an apple slice and held it out to me. I took it, our fingers brushing. You need to take care of yourself, Mom. He murmured something in his voice, made my C***** T tighten. It was the way he said it, low, intimate, as if he were the one responsible for me and not the other way around. I swallowed the lump in my throat and nodded. I know. But the truth was I wasn't sure I knew anything at all anymore. The house felt quieter than usual, as if it had been holding its breath along with me. Brian wouldn't be home for another hour, if he even came home at all. Lately, his arrivals had been unpredictable. His excuses: paper, thin work meetings, student consultations, late-night lectures. I leaned against the counter, watching Amelia as he gathered the apple slices onto a plate. He had always moved with a certain calmness, a steadiness that made me feel anchored even when everything else felt like it was slipping away. Are you hungry? He asked, glancing at me. I shook my head. Not really, he hesitated, then pushed the plate toward me. Anyway, you should eat something. His voice was gentle, but there was something firm underneath. A quiet insistence that made my throat tighten. I took a slice more for his sake than my own. As I chewed, I let my eyes settle on him. It was strange, the wait time had transformed him in my mind. He was still the who clung to me in the grocery store, who whispered secrets to me bedtime, his voice warm and sleepy against my shoulder. But the boy had disappeared, replaced by someone taller, stronger, someone who carried himself with an easy confidence, who had inherited his father's sharp features but softened them with a kindness that was all his own. He caught me looking and smiled. "What, nothing?" I exhaled a quiet laugh. "Just you look so much like your father." Sometimes his smile faded. "I hope not too much," he muttered. The words hung between us heavier than I expected. I hesitated. "You and your dad are okay, aren't you?" Amelia shrugged, grabbing an apple slice for himself. "We don't talk much." I knew that Brian had always been distant with him the way he was with everyone. But lately the gap between them had widened. Amelia no longer asked for his father's advice, he didn't sit with him at the table or wait up for him at night. And maybe I had been too distracted to notice just how deep that distance had grown. Amelia leaned against the counter, studying me. "Is something going on?" My pulse fluttered. "What do you mean?" "You've been different." His brows knitted together quieter. I opened my mouth, then closed it. What could I say? That my marriage was unraveling, that I had been walking around with a weight in my C*******T, so heavy I could barely breathe, that every time I looked at Brian, I saw someone I no longer recognized. I swallowed hard. "It's nothing." His gaze didn't waver. "You sure?" The concern in his voice made my C******T ache. I forced another smile. Of course, he didn't believe me. I could see it in his eyes, but he didn't press. Instead, he reached out, brushing a stray strand of hair from my face. His fingers were warm. Lingering just a second too long, my breath caught. I told myself I was imagining it, the way he looked at me, the quiet intensity in his expression. But my skin still tinged where he had touched me, and when he finally pulled away, the space between us felt too small, too charged with something unspoken. "I just worry about you," he said softly, and for a moment I forgot how to breathe. The loneliness crept in slowly, like a fog rolling in from the sea. It started the day Amelia left for university, the house suddenly too big, too empty. I had prepared myself for the quiet, for the absence of his footsteps on the stairs, his voice calling from the kitchen, the familiar sound of his laughter filling the rooms. But I hadn't prepared for the way it would settle into my bones, how it would wrap itself around my C******T and squeeze. At first I tried to stay busy. I cleaned, reorganized, took up reading again. But no matter how many distractions I fill my day with, night always came, and with it the unbearable silence. The bed felt colder, the house darker, and the weight of being alone, truly alone, pressed down on me until I couldn't breathe. Brian noticed, or maybe he didn't. If he did, he didn't care enough to ask. He had become more of a ghost than a husband, drifting in and out of our home with the faint scent of someone else's perfume clinging to his skin. I told myself I could manage, that this was just a phase, a storm to wait out. But then one afternoon, as I sat by the window staring at nothing, something inside me broke. The tears came hard, fast, unstoppable. I curled up on the couch, my body shaking with sobs. I hadn't even realized I'd been holding in. Hours passed, the sky darkened. "Still," I cried. And then, without thinking, I picked up my phone and called Amelia. He answered after the second ring, his voice warm, familiar. "Mom." I couldn't speak at first, only hiccup into the receiver. "Mom, what's wrong?" His tone sharpened with worry, my throat clenched. "I can't stop crying." A pause. "I don't know what to do anymore," I whispered, voice cracking. Amelia didn't rush to reassure me with empty words. He didn't tell me it would be okay, didn't try to fix something he couldn't see. He simply exhaled. "Steady and sure, I'll think of something." "Mom," his voice, "I'll save you." I wanted to tell him that wasn't his job, that he was too young to carry the weight of my sadness. But the words never came. The call ended and I sat there. The phone pressed to my C******T, waiting for nothing. The next afternoon I heard the front door open. I had barely gotten up from the couch when Amelia stepped inside, his presence filling the space like sunlight, breaking through storm clouds. "Amelia," I breathed, wiping at my face. Ashamed of how I must have looked, unkempt, fragile. Not at all like the mother I was supposed to be. He didn't seem to care. He just smiled and held up a box. "What's that?" I asked, my voice hoarse from crying. New sneakers. His lips curled at the corners. Open it. Mom, curious. I lifted the lid, my breath caught inside. Nestled in a soft blanket was a tiny blonde Labrador puppy, its round eyes blinking up at me, its small pink tongue peeking out as it yawned. A bright red ribbon was tied around its little neck, the bow slightly crooked for the first time. In what felt like forever. I laughed, a real genuine laugh. Oh my God. I reached in my hands, trembling as I scooped the puppy into my arms. It was warm, impossibly soft, its little bodies formed, then settled against me with a small sigh. Amelia grinned. Now you have something to take care of. I looked up at him, my heart swelling. It's our little baby, I said, holding the puppy close. He nodded. Yeah, Mom, it is something shifted in the air between us, something unspoken but deeply understood. I wasn't alone, not as long as I had Amelia. And now, this tiny creature who had already curled up against my C*******T as if it had always belonged there. Amelia reached out, brushing a stray tear from my cheek, his touch lingering just a second longer than necessary. I didn't pull away, and for the first time in months I felt like maybe, just maybe, I could breathe again. The puppy wiggled in my arms, warm and alive, a tiny bundle of energy that smelled like fresh blankets and sunshine. I held it closer, pressing my face into its soft fur, inhaling the small, innocent scent of something new, something untouched by sadness. Amelia watched me, a quiet smile tugging at the corner of his lips. You really like him. Hey, tears welded in my eyes again, but this time they weren't heavy. They weren't the same suffocating kind of grief that had drowned me the night before. I love him, I whispered. Amelia's grin widened. Good. I ran my fingers over the puppy's silky ears, marveling at how tiny it was. How fragile. Does he have a name? That's up to you, Amelia said. I glanced at the puppy again, at the bright red ribbon still tied neatly around its neck, and then at Amelia. How about Henry? Amelia nodded approvingly. I like that. I scratched behind Henry's ears, feeling his little body relax against me. You really thought of everything, didn't you? His expression softened. I just wanted to see you smile again, Mom, and there. It was that quiet, steady love in his voice, the kind that had always been there even when he was small, the kind I had leaned on more times than I cared to admit. I set the puppy down, letting him wobble on unsteady legs across the kitchen floor, sniffing at everything with wide-eyed wonder. Amelia laughed as Henry tripped over his own paws, his clumsy. Just like you. I swatted him playfully, but the warmth in his voice filled something hollow inside me. For the next few minutes, we sat on the floor together, watching Henry explore his new home. Amelia grabbed an old dish towel and rolled it into a ball, tossing it gently toward the puppy. Henry pounced on it with excitement, his tail wagging furiously. He's got more energy than me, I said. Shaking my head, Amelia smirked. Well, that's not saying much. You've been dragging around here like a ghost, I stiffened. But there was no accusation in his voice. Just an observation, a truth I didn't want to admit. Yeah, I murmured, watching Henry wrestle the towel with tiny, determined growls. I guess I have. Amelia shifted closer, resting an arm on his bent knee. It's been hard, hasn't it, me? Leaving Dad being, he hesitated. I sighed. Distant, his jaw tightened. Yeah, for a long time neither of us spoke. I looked at Amelia, at the way his features had sharpened in the past year, the way his shoulders had broadened. He wasn't a boy anymore, and I wasn't sure when I had stopped seeing him as one. You don't have to worry about me, I said, forcing a small smile. Amelia's gaze didn't waver, but I do. My breath caught. He reached out, brushing a stray lock of hair from my face. His touch was careful, slow, as if he were memorizing something delicate. You don't have to be strong all the time, he murmured. Not with me. Something in me wavered. I swallowed, lowering my eyes. Amelia, but he didn't move away. His fingers still lingered against my cheek, warm and steady, and for the first time in a long time, I felt seen, truly seen. Henry yawned, curling up between us, completely unaware of the shift in the air. I let out a slow breath, reaching down to stroke his tiny back. Thank you, I whispered. Amelia's voice was quiet, almost reverent, always Mom, and for a moment the loneliness didn't feel so unbearable. The days that followed felt different. Lighter somehow. Henry brought life back into the house, filling the empty spaces with his clumsy steps and excited barks. I found myself laughing more, getting up earlier just to watch him chase his own tail in the morning sun. But it wasn't just the puppy, it was Amelia. He stayed longer than I expected, even though I knew he had classes to attend, a life waiting for him back at the university. But he lingered, making excuses to run errands for me, cooking dinner together like we used to. Sitting on the couch at night with Henry curled between us, and I let him. I should have told him to go back, should have reminded him that I was fine. That I was stronger than I had let on the night. I called him in tears, but the truth was I wasn't ready for him to leave again, because when he was here I didn't feel so lost. One evening after dinner, we sat outside on the back porch watching Henry tumble through the grass. The sun had just set, the air warm and heavy, with the scent of late summer. Amelia leaned back against the railing, stretching his long legs out in front of him. I forgot how quiet it gets here, he murmured. I sipped my tea, nodding. You miss the city. Sometimes he turned his head toward me, a slow smile on his lips, but I miss you more. The words settled between us, thickening the air. I let out a small nervous laugh. Oh, come on, you're 21. Amelia. You've got a whole world out there to distract you. His smile faded slightly, his eyes searching mine. That doesn't mean I stopped worrying about you. Something about the way, he said. It made my stomach tight. I looked away, watching Henry roll onto his back, kicking his legs in the air. You don't have to, sweetheart, but I do, he said softly. I always have. I swallowed, my throat felt dry. That's not fair to you. Amelia shifted closer, his knee brushing against mine. Maybe, he admitted, but I don't mind the warmth of his body, even through the fabric of my jeans. Sent a strange shiver through me. I forced myself to focus on the puppy, on anything but the way Amelia was looking at me, like I was someone fragile, someone worth holding on to, like I was more than just his mother. You should be out with friends, I said quickly, my voice thinner than I wanted it to be. Parties, dates. I don't want you wasting your time here with me. Amelia let out a quiet chuckle. Mom, you say that like I don't have a choice. I turned to him, trying to keep the smile on my lips. You don't go live your life. He studied me for a long moment, something unreadable in his expression. Then finally he nodded. All right, I'll go back tomorrow. I should have been relieved. Instead, my C****** T asked. We sat there in silence for a while, the crickets humming in the distance, the night stretching between us. When I finally stood, my legs felt unsteady. I should head in. Amelia stood too, his movements slower, more deliberate. He reached out, tucking a loose strand of hair behind my ear. His fingers lingered for just a second longer than necessary, and that was when it happened, that flicker of something dangerous, something I shouldn't have felt. I inhaled sharply, stepping back. Good night, sweetheart. His eyes darkened slightly, but he nodded. Good night, Mom. I turned away quickly, my heart pounding. I didn't sleep that night because no matter how hard I tried to push it away, I couldn't ignore the truth. I had felt something and it terrified me. But the truth was that I finally felt busy. Finally, I felt life in the house and in myself. I slowly began to bloom like a tulip. My story ends here. If you feel that this story is meaningful and brings useful lessons, please like and subscribe to the channel to support me. Thanks for listening and see you in the next videos.